The repair bay always sounded like it was thinking. Low hums, soft clicks, the occasional irritated hiss from a tool that believed it deserved better treatment. Pell had grown used to all of it. He preferred it that way. Machines made sense. They broke for reasons. They could be persuaded, coaxed, or occasionally threatened back into working order. People were less cooperative. He adjusted the stabilizer ring of a half-disassembled cargo drone and squinted at it. "You're pretending to be complicated," he muttered. "I respect the effort, but I'm not buying it." The drone did not respond, which Pell took as a sign of guilt. The station beyond his bay moved with its usual restless energy. Ships docking, traders arguing, someone shouting about misplaced cargo that was almost certainly exactly where they had left it. None of it reached him in any meaningful way. He liked being slightly forgotten. Forgotten people didn't get assigned dangerous jobs. He was reaching for a calibration probe when he noticed it. The absence of noise. Not silence exactly. The bay never truly went silent. But something had shifted, like a piece of the station's rhythm had stepped out of place. Pell glanced toward the entrance. A small figure stood there. At first he assumed it was a child from one of the transient families that drifted through the station. But that thought lasted only a second. She stood too still, too composed. And then there were the ears, long, elegant, tapering slightly upward, framing a face that might have been human if not for the faint, almost luminous quality of her skin. Pell straightened slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth that had long ago given up on being clean. Hi," he said, because it felt like the sort of thing one should say when confronted with a mysterious silent child in a repair bay. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward, her movements quiet and deliberate, and held something out to him. It was small, intricate, and clearly broken. Pell took it carefully, turning it over in his hands. "Well," he said after a moment, "you've come to the right place if your goal was to find someone who fixes things and also talks too much while doing it." No reaction. "Good," he added. "That means I can maintain my reputation." The object was strange, not just alien. Pell had seen plenty of alien tech, but constructed in a way that made his brain itch. It wasn't arranged according to any logical sequence he recognized. Components seemed to overlap in ways that shouldn't physically fit, like the thing had been designed by someone who considered geometry a polite suggestion. He frowned, intrigued despite himself. "You know," he said, glancing up at her, "usually when people bring me something like this, they at least attempt to explain what it does, or what it used to do, or whether it's going to explode if I breathe on it." She simply watched him, her large eyes unblinking. "Right," Pell nodded. "Strong, silent type. I can work with that." He set the object on his workbench and leaned in closer, his fingers moving with practiced care. The surface responded faintly to his touch, dim lights flickering like something trying to wake from a long sleep. "Okay," he murmured, more to himself than to her. "You're not just broken. You're confused." He paused, then snorted softly. "Great. I've been assigned emotional support duties for a machine. That's new." The girl tilted her head slightly as if considering his words. Pell began to disassemble the outer casing, not forcing anything, just easing it apart. "Rule 1, he said, never bully a system you don't understand. It will win. It always wins. Usually by catching fire at the worst possible moment." A small component shifted under his fingers, responding to a gentle adjustment rather than the precise angle he would have expected. "Huh," he said. "So you don't like being told what to do either. We're going to get along just fine." He worked slowly, testing, adjusting, occasionally pausing to let the device settle, as if it needed time to accept each change. The girl had moved closer now, standing just beside the workbench, watching every motion with intense focus. "Pressure's off, by the way," Pell added. "If I break it more, I'll just fix it again." That's the beauty of low expectations. For a moment, nothing happened. Then as he reconnected a final, oddly shaped conduit, the object reacted. Light spread across its surface in soft, flowing patterns. A faint sound followed, not mechanical, not entirely, but something closer to a gentle, melodic chime. It wasn't loud, but it filled the space in a way that felt warm. Pell blinked. "Well," he said quietly, "that's new." He leaned back slightly, giving it space, as the light shifted again, forming delicate shapes that moved like living things. Beside him, the girl made a small sound. Pell turned. She was smiling. It was subtle at first, like she wasn't entirely sure how to do it anymore. But it grew slowly until it transformed her whole expression. Pell stared for a second, caught off guard. Then he cleared his throat and gestured awkwardly at the device. "Yeah, I do that sometimes," he said. "Fix things. Occasionally impress mysterious silent visitors. It's all part of the service." She didn't respond, but the smile remained. A moment later, she reached out, took the device carefully, and stepped back. Pell opened his mouth, about to ask something, anything, but she had already turned. She walked out of the bay as quietly as she had entered, leaving behind only the soft echo of that strange melodic sound. Pell stood there for a while, staring at the empty doorway. Then he looked down at his workbench, at the scattered tools, at the place where the device had been. "Huh," he muttered. He picked up his cloth again, wiping his hands slowly. "Well," he added after a moment, "at least that one didn't explode." He paused, considering. Yet. The repair bay did not usually feel haunted. Pell decided sometime around the third hour of staring at the same diagnostic screen that it definitely did now. Not in a dramatic way. Nothing floated. Nothing whispered his name in ancient languages. But there was a lingering sense that something had passed through his space and left a trace behind, like static clinging to the air. He tapped the screen. The cargo drone he had been working on blinked a warning symbol at him with what he interpreted as passive-aggressive intent. "Yes, I see that," Pell muttered. "You're very upset about your alignment. We've all had difficult days." He adjusted the stabilizer again, then stopped halfway through the motion. The tool in his hand, an ordinary calibration probe, flickered. Not malfunctioned, flickered, like a reflection that wasn't entirely sure it belonged to the object. Pell slowly turned it over. "No," he said quietly, "we are not doing that today." He set the probe down very carefully, as if it might take offense if handled incorrectly. The moment his fingers left it, the faint distortion vanished. Pell stared at it for a long second. "Right," he said finally. "Either I'm tired or I've accidentally fixed something that disagrees with reality." He glanced toward the entrance of the bay, half expecting to see the small girl standing there again. Empty. "Good," he added, "because that would have been unsettlingly convenient." He went back to work, but the feeling didn't leave. It lingered in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Tools seemed slightly lighter in his hands. Interfaces responded a fraction faster than they should. At one point, a diagnostic routine completed before he had actually started it. Pell leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. "Okay," he said. "Now I'm offended." He tapped the console again, slower this time, watching carefully. The system reacted instantly, as if it had anticipated his input. "That's cheating," Pell informed it. "You don't get to be faster than me in my own workspace." The console did not apologize. He rubbed his face, then let out a short laugh. "Great. I've finally reached the stage where I argue with equipment, and it argues back by being efficient." Still, something about it felt familiar, not the behavior, the feeling. Like the device from yesterday had left behind a pattern his tools were now quietly imitating. Pell frowned, thinking. "That's not how machines work," he said. The station lights flickered once overhead. He looked up immediately. "Oh, don't start." A moment passed. Nothing else happened. "Good," Pell added. "We're all behaving normally again. I like normal." He stood, stretching slightly, and walked toward a small storage rack near the back of the bay. As he reached for a replacement component, his hand paused midair. For a brief second, he wasn't entirely sure which part he needed. Then, without thinking, his fingers moved, selecting a piece he hadn't consciously chosen. He blinked, looking down at it. "I did not plan that," he said. He carried it back to the workbench anyway, installing it with automatic precision. The drone's warning symbol vanished instantly, replaced by a clean, stable readout. Pell stared at it, then at his hands, then back at the drone. Well, he said slowly, either I'm getting better or something else is. The bay remained quiet, offering no clarification. He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, considering. This is fine, he decided after a moment. Everything is fine. I fixed a strange alien toy, and now my tools are acting like they've attended a motivational seminar. Perfectly normal sequence of events. He nodded once, as if convincing himself, then paused. Unless, he added, that thing wasn't just a toy. The thought settled into his mind with uncomfortable ease. He replayed the memory, the way the device had responded, not like a machine being repaired, but like something waking up. The way it had adjusted to him instead of the other way around. And the girl, the way she had watched, silent and focused, as if she had known exactly what would happen. Pell exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, new theory. That was not a toy. He glanced at the doorway again, still empty. Which raises a follow-up question, he continued. If that wasn't a toy, what exactly did I just fix? The station answered with distant noise, voices, engines, the usual chaotic rhythm of life continuing as if nothing had changed. But inside the repair bay, something had. Pell could feel it now, faint but undeniable, like the space itself had shifted slightly to accommodate something new. He picked up the calibration probe again, turning it over in his fingers. No flicker this time. Good id, he said. Stay normal. I need at least one of us to remain predictable. He set it down and looked around his bay, his small, controlled corner of the universe. For the first time since he had started working here, it didn't feel entirely under his control. Pell let out a quiet breath, then straightened. Well, he said, reaching for his tools again, if the universe is going to get strange, the least it can do is give me advance notice next time. He paused, then added under his breath, preferably in writing. The station alarms did not panic. They were designed not to. They did not scream or blare wildly. Instead, they shifted tone, subtle at first, a low harmonic vibration that threaded through the walls, through the floor, through the bones of the station itself. It was the kind of sound that made people stop mid-step without knowing why. Pell noticed it when his wrench slipped, not dramatically, just enough to tap the edge of the panel with a metallic tick. He frowned. That's new, he said, glancing upward. We don't usually do ominous background music unless something expensive is about to happen. The lights dimmed slightly, then stabilized. Across the bay, a cargo handler froze mid-motion, then slowly backed away from whatever it had been doing, as if it had suddenly remembered an important appointment elsewhere. Pell set his wrench down. Okay, he muttered. That's less comforting. The station intercom crackled to life, then went silent. He waited. Nothing. Excellent, Pell said. Clear communication. Love that. He stepped out of his bay, leaning just far enough to look down the corridor. People were moving faster now, not running, but close enough to it that the difference felt like a technicality. Security units passed by in tight formation, their movements precise, controlled, and just a little too deliberate. Pell watched them go. Ah, he nodded. Everything is fine, but please move quickly and don't ask questions, walk. Classic. He stepped back into the bay just as a voice finally came through the intercom. Unscheduled diplomatic arrival. All non-essential personnel remain at designated stations. The message repeated once, then cut off. Pell blinked. I'm essential, he said immediately to no one in particular. Extremely essential. Vital even. I fix things, sometimes correctly. The station hummed in response, unimpressed. He turned back to his workbench, placing both hands on it as if grounding himself. Unscheduled, he repeated. That's never a good word. Scheduled arrivals bring paperwork. Unscheduled arrivals bring consequences. A shadow moved across the entrance of the bay. Pell looked up. 2 security officers stood there, armored, silent, and very clearly not here to have their equipment repaired. Pell raised a hand in a small wave. Hi, he said. If something's broken, I'm your person. If nothing's broken, I can still look at it and tell you it might break later. They did not respond. One of them stepped forward. Pell, the officer said, voice flat. Pell blinked. That's me. he confirmed. I assume this is either very good news or very bad news, and based on your tone, I'm leaning toward memorable. You are to remain here, the officer continued. Do not leave the bay. Pell tilted his head. Interesting instruction. Usually when someone says don't leave, it's because something outside is dangerous, which raises a follow-up question. Remain here, the officer repeated. Right, Pell nodded quickly. Staying. Definitely staying. Big fan of staying. The officers positioned themselves just outside the bay, standing like statues that had taken a personal interest in him. Pell watched them for a moment. This is new, he said quietly. The air shifted again. This time it was not subtle. The low hum of the station seemed to draw inward, as if something vast had entered its space and everything else was adjusting to accommodate it. Pell felt it in his chest, a pressure, not painful, but undeniable. He swallowed. Okay, he whispered. That's significantly less normal. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, not hurried, not heavy, measured, each one precise, deliberate, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with mass. The security officer straightened. Pell, who had been leaning casually against his workbench, immediately stopped leaning. Posture, he muttered, standing upright. Very important in situations where you might accidentally offend someone who controls large fleets. The footsteps grew closer, and then she appeared. Queen Vreth did not enter the bay like a person walking into a room. She entered like the room had always belonged to her and had only just remembered. She was tall, composed, her presence impossibly still in a space filled with motion. Her features were almost human, but not quite. Too precise, too intentional, and her ears, long and elegant, marked her unmistakably as something beyond it. Her gaze settled on Pell. He felt it immediately. Not hostile, not kind. Evaluating. Pell cleared his throat. Hello, he said, because apparently that was still his strategy for dealing with incomprehensible situations. Welcome to this, he gestured vaguely around the bay. Slightly disorganized but emotionally supportive repair environment. Silence. The Queen stepped forward. The air seemed to follow her. Pell resisted the very strong urge to step back. Barely. You repaired it, she said. Her voice was calm, controlled, and carried an undercurrent that made it clear she was not accustomed to repeating herself. Pell blinked. I repair a lot of things, he replied carefully. You might need to be slightly more specific unless this is a test, in which case I would like to request a different test. A pause, then, my daughter's device, the Queen said. Pell's mind immediately supplied the image. The small object, the shifting light, the girl's silent stare. Oh, he said. He straightened slightly, then nodded. Yes, that. I did fix that, or helped it fix itself. It was a collaborative effort. The Queen watched him. Pell shifted his weight. Mostly me, he added, but it was very participatory. Another pause, then the Queen spoke again. My daughter has not smiled in 2 years. The words settled into the room, heavy and precise. Pell opened his mouth, closed it. For once, he had no immediate response. The Queen took another step closer. She smiled, she said. Last night. Pell exhaled slowly. That's good, he said, quieter now. That's really good. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then, to Pell's complete and utter confusion, she sat down, right there, on the edge of his workbench. Pell stared. I did not expect that, he admitted. The Queen did not react. Instead, she looked directly at him and asked, How did you do it? Pell blinked, then blinked again. That, he said carefully, is a surprisingly difficult question to answer without sounding like I have no idea what I'm doing. The Queen waited. Pell rubbed the back of his neck. I didn't force it, he said slowly. I mean, I tried at first, but it didn't respond to that. So I just adjusted. Let it be what it was instead of what I thought it should be. He glanced at her. I listened, he added with a small, uncertain shrug, which is not usually listed in standard repair manuals, but it probably should be. Silence filled the space again. Pell shifted slightly. Also, he added, unable to stop himself, I talked to it. A lot. Which may or may not have helped, but it definitely made me feel like I was contributing. The Queen's gaze did not waver, and for a brief moment, just a fraction, something in her expression changed. The silence did not break immediately. It stretched, settled, and seemed to examine Pell from every angle at once, as if even the air wanted to hear what he would say next before deciding how to behave. Pell resisted the urge to fill it. He failed. So, he said, clearing his throat, just to confirm, I'm not in trouble, right? Because this feels like the part of the conversation where someone usually says, you have committed an offense against the sovereignty, and then things escalate very quickly. The Queen did not answer the question. Instead, she reached toward the workbench, her fingers brushing lightly against one of Pell's tools. The tool responded, not physically but subtly, its surface emitting a faint ripple of light, as if acknowledging her presence. Pell noticed immediately. Okay, he said under his breath, that is definitely new. The Queen withdrew her hand, her gaze shifting briefly to the tool, then back to Pell. You altered it, she said. Pell frowned slightly. The device? The interaction, she clarified. Pell blinked. I'm going to need you to elaborate, because I'm already operating outside my usual understanding of normal, and I'd like to avoid making it worse. A pause. Then the Queen spoke again, her voice calm, but carrying something deeper beneath it. The device is not mechanical in the way you perceive. It responds to intent, to pattern, to presence. Pell stared at her. I'm sorry, he said. Did you just say it responds to presence? Yes. He looked down at his hands, turning them over slowly. I knew I should have read more manual, he muttered. The Queen continued, unbothered by his confusion. It is designed to bond with its user, to reflect emotional state, to stabilize cognitive patterns. Pell's eyes widened slightly. So I didn't fix a toy, he said. I accidentally performed emotional recalibration on an advanced alien system. Yes. He let out a slow breath. That feels like something I should have been warned about. The Queen watched him carefully. You approached it without force, she said. Without expectation. You adapted. Pell shrugged faintly. That's usually what happens when I don't understand something. I stop pretending that I do. A faint flicker crossed her expression again. Not quite amusement, but close enough that Pell noticed. Well, he added, gesturing lightly, that and the fact that forcing things tends to result in explosions, which I try to avoid. Mostly because I work here. The Queen's gaze shifted briefly around the bay. The scattered tools, the worn surfaces, the quiet disorder of a place built for function rather than appearance. You exist in limitation, she said. Pell nodded. Oh, absolutely. I'm extremely limited. It's one of my defining traits. And yet, she continued, you were effective. Pell considered that, then smiled slightly. Low expectations, he said. Very powerful. No one suspects you of anything. Another pause. The tension in the room had changed. It was still there, still present, but no longer sharp. It had softened, just enough that breathing felt easier. Pell shifted his weight, glancing briefly toward the entrance where the guard still stood, unmoving. I have to ask, he said, lowering his voice slightly. Is this a normal visit for you? Because if it is, I feel like the station should have prepared snacks or something. The Queen did not look away from him. This is not normal, she said. Good, Pell replied. That makes two of us. A brief silence followed. Then the Queen did something unexpected. She leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on the edge of the workbench, bringing herself closer to his level. Not above him, not distant, but present. My daughter, she said, has been unreachable. The word carried weight. Pell's expression shifted, the humor fading just enough to make room for something else. He nodded slowly. I've seen that, he said. Not exactly like this, but similar. The Queen studied him. Explain. Pell hesitated, then gestured vaguely with one hand. People break, he said. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes everything still works, technically speaking, but something important just stops responding. He glanced at the spot where the device had been the day before. You can't force it back, he continued. If you try, it just resists harder, or shuts down completely. The Queen's gaze did not waver. So you wait? She asked. Pell shook his head. Not exactly. You give it space. You listen. You adjust. You stop treating it like a problem and start treating it like something that matters on its own terms. He paused, then added with a small, self-conscious smile, and occasionally you make bad jokes, just in case that helps. The Queen was silent. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, my daughter responded to you, she said. Pell shifted slightly. I think she responded to the fact that I didn't try to control anything, he replied. I just worked with what was there. The Queen straightened slowly, her presence shifting again. Not heavier, not lighter, but more focused. I require your assistance, she said. Pell blinked. That sounds official, he said carefully. It is. He nodded once. Right, of course it is. A beat passed. Then he pointed gently at himself. Just to clarify, he said, you are asking me, specifically, for assistance. Not someone more qualified. Not someone with a better understanding of whatever this is. Me. Yes. Pell looked down at his hands again, then back at her. I fixed broken cargo drone, he said. You fixed my daughter's silence. The words landed harder than anything else she had said. Pell opened his mouth, closed it. For once, there was no immediate joke. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. Pell did not immediately agree. He also did not immediately refuse. Instead, he did what he always did when faced with something far too large for his understanding. He bought time. Okay, he repeated slower now, as if the word might expand into something more useful if given enough space. That's a very significant request. The Queen remained still, watching him with the same precise attention she had given everything since entering the bay. Pell rubbed his hands together, leaving faint streaks of grease that he immediately noticed, and then unsuccessfully tried to wipe away on an already ruined cloth. I just want to be clear, he continued, because clarity is important in situations where one might accidentally agree to something life-changing without fully understanding the consequences. A pause. You are asking me to help your daughter, he said carefully, which I understand. That part is good, reasonable, noble even. The Queen did not interrupt. But, Pell added, raising a finger slightly, you are also the most feared ruler in this region of space, possibly several adjacent regions, and you arrived here with enough security presence to make the station reconsider its life choices. Another small pause. So, he finished, I feel like there are layers to this. The Queen's expression did not change. There are, she said. Pell nodded. Good. I appreciate honesty. It makes things slightly less terrifying. He leaned back against the workbench, crossing his arms, trying to look like someone who was thoughtfully considering a decision, rather than someone whose entire understanding of his own life had just been quietly rearranged. What happens if I say no? He asked. The guards at the entrance did not move. The station hummed softly, as if it too was waiting for the answer. The Queen regarded him for a long moment. You will not be harmed, she said. Pell blinked. That is a very specific reassurance. It is the only one required, she replied. He exhaled slowly. Right, of course it is. He looked down at the floor, then back up at her. And if I say yes? You will come with me, she said. You will attempt to do what you have already done once. Pell tilted his head. Attempt, he repeated. That's a good word. I like that word. It implies room for failure without immediate consequences. A pause. There are no immediate consequences, the Queen said. Pell stared at her. I'm going to choose to interpret that optimistically, he said. Silence settled again, but it felt different now. Not heavy, not pressing, but balanced. As if something had shifted into alignment without anyone quite noticing when. Pell pushed himself off the workbench and began pacing slowly, his hands moving as he thought. I didn't do anything special, he said. I need you to understand that. I didn't use advanced techniques or Whatever it is your people usually use for this kind of thing. You were effective, the Queen replied. Pell nodded. Accidentally. That does not diminish the result. He stopped pacing. It does make it harder to repeat, he said. The Queen's gaze remained steady. Then you will adapt again. Pell let out a small breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. You say that like it's simple. It is not simple, she said. It is necessary. That landed. Pell looked away for a moment, his eyes drifting across the familiar chaos of his repair bay. The scattered tools, the half-finished projects, the quiet, predictable mess that had defined his world for as long as he could remember. This place, he said quietly, makes sense to me. The Queen did not respond. I know what things are here, he continued. Even when they're broken, I understand how they're supposed to work. There's a logic to it. He picked up a small tool, turning it in his hand. Out there, he added, glancing toward her. I don't have that. A brief silence followed. Then, you did not have it here, the Queen said, with the device. Pell paused. That's true, he admitted. And yet, she continued, you succeeded. He looked down at the tool in his hand, then set it back on the workbench with careful precision. Yeah, he said softly. I did. Another pause. Then Pell straightened, running a hand through his hair, leaving it slightly more disordered than before. Okay, he said louder now, as if committing to the sound of it. Let's assume, hypothetically, that I agree to this. The Queen said nothing. I would need things, Pell continued, gesturing around him. My tools, my workspace. I can't just walk into wherever it is you're from and start fixing things with whatever happens to be lying around. That's how people lose important components. You will have what you require, she said. Pell nodded once. Good, because I am very particular about my tools. They are the only things in my life that consistently listen to me. He paused, then added, well, usually. The faintest shift touched the Queen's expression again. Pell noticed. Was that almost amusement? He asked. I feel like that was almost amusement. It was not, she said. Close, though, Pell replied. We're making progress. The tension eased just slightly, enough that breathing felt natural again. Pell took one last look around his bay, his eyes lingering on the small details. The marks on the workbench, the way the light caught on the edges of worn metal, the quiet, familiar presence of a place that had never asked anything of him beyond what he could give. Then he looked back at the Queen. Okay, he said. The word felt different this time. Not uncertain, not hesitant. Resolved. I'll help, he said. The guards did not move. The station did not react. But something shifted anyway. The Queen inclined her head slightly. Not a bow, not quite, but an acknowledgement. It will be arranged, she said. Pell nodded, then immediately raised a hand. One condition, he added. The Queen waited. Pell hesitated for half a second, then said, if I'm going to be taken across the galaxy to fix something I don't fully understand, I would like at least one decent meal. A pause. And maybe a chair, he added. A comfortable one. I do my best work sitting down. The Queen regarded him for a long moment. Then, you will have both, she said. Pell exhaled, a small smile forming despite everything. Great, he said. Then this is officially the strangest job I've ever accepted. The ship did not arrive with noise. It arrived by removing it. One moment the station thrummed with its usual layered chaos. Engines, voices, distant impacts of docking clamps. And the next, all of it seemed to fold inward, as if something immense had quietly taken hold of the surrounding space and told it to be still. Pell noticed because the tool in his hand stopped vibrating. He looked down at it. That's not supposed to happen, he said. The silence deepened, not empty, but controlled. Every sound that remained felt deliberate, permitted rather than natural. Pell slowly turned toward the open bay doors. At first he saw nothing. Then the light shifted, not dimming, not brightening, bending. A vast shape revealed itself not by entering space, but by being acknowledged by it. The hull of the vessel seemed less like metal and more like a surface that convinced reality to move around it. Smooth, dark, impossibly precise. No visible seams, no external weaponry, no obvious propulsion. Pell blinked. "I don't like that," he said quietly. "I prefer ships that look like they obey physics. It builds trust." Behind him, a few of his tools flickered again, responding faintly to the presence outside, as if recognizing something far beyond their design. "Please don't start bonding with it," Pell added. "We just met." The Queen stood near the entrance of the bay, unmoving, as if the arrival was as ordinary to her as a cargo shuttle. Pell walked closer, stopping just short of the threshold, his hands resting instinctively on his belt as he stared up at the ship. "That's yours," he said. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? I assume it also makes its own decisions and occasionally judges people." "It does not judge," the Queen said. Pell glanced sideways at her. "I feel like it does," he replied. "I can feel it evaluating my life choices from here." A section of the ship's surface shifted. Not opened. Shifted. The material parted without visible movement, revealing a passageway that seemed less constructed and more invited. Pell stared at it. "That's worse," he said. "Doors should open. That just happened." The guards moved first, stepping forward with precise coordination. The Queen followed without hesitation. Pell remained where he was. "Right," he said to himself. "This is the part where I walk into the unknown with complete confidence and absolutely no unnecessary commentary." He took a step, paused. "Just to confirm," he added, looking back at his bay, "if I don't come back, someone should at least finish that drone." No one answered. Pell nodded once. "Good. Glad we're all on the same page." He stepped into the passage. The moment he crossed the threshold, the sensation changed. Not the temperature, not the gravity, something subtler. The air felt aware. Pell stopped mid-step, looking around. "Okay," he whispered. "That's definitely not standard." The interior of the ship did not resemble any structure he had ever seen. There were no visible panels, no seams, no obvious sources of light. Everything flowed. Curved surfaces meeting without edges. Faint patterns shifting beneath the material, as if the ship itself was quietly thinking. Pell reached out, then stopped just short of touching the wall. "Do I get permission before I interact with things?" he asked. "Or is it more of a learn by consequences situation?" "It will not harm you," the Queen said. Pell nodded. "That is the second very specific reassurance I've received today. I'm collecting them." He placed his hand against the surface. It responded instantly, not with movement, but with a subtle change in texture, adjusting to the shape of his palm. Pell froze. "It noticed me," he said. "Yes." He slowly pulled his hand back. "I'm trying very hard not to take that personally." They moved deeper into the ship. The corridor did not feel like a corridor. It expanded slightly as they walked, the space adjusting in ways Pell could not quite track, as if distance itself was being negotiated. He glanced back once. The entrance was no longer visible. "That's concerning," he muttered. "I like knowing where the exit was." It was a comforting concept. The guards continued forward without hesitation. The Queen walked beside him now, her presence steady, unchanged. Pell cleared his throat. "So," he said, "this ship, does it always do this? The whole reality is optional thing?" "It adapts," she replied. "Of course it does," Pell said. "Everything adapts. I'm starting to think I'm the only thing in the galaxy that doesn't." The corridor opened into a wider space, a chamber, not large in the way Pell expected, but expansive in a way that made size feel irrelevant. The walls curved upward, meeting in a distant point that seemed farther away than it should have been. At the center of the room, a structure waited. Not a chair, not exactly, but something close. Pell stopped. "And that's mine, isn't it?" he said. "Yes." He approached it cautiously, circling once, studying its shape. "I asked for a comfortable chair," he said. "I did not expect the chair to look like it understands me better than I understand myself." "It will support you," the Queen said. Pell nodded. "That's what worries me." He hesitated for a moment, then sat. The structure shifted instantly, adjusting to his posture, his weight, even the slight tension in his shoulders. Pell exhaled. Okay, he admitted. This is very comfortable. A faint hum resonated through the room, subtle but present. Pell leaned back slightly, then sat forward again, as if testing whether the chair would judge him for changing positions. It's still watching me, isn't it? He said. It is aware of you, the Queen replied. Right, Pell said. We're all aware of each other. That's normal. He looked up at her. So, he added, what happens now? The Queen regarded him for a moment. Then she said, now you meet her. Pell's expression shifted. The humor didn't vanish, but it stepped aside. Okay, he said quietly. The room changed before Pell saw her. It wasn't movement, not in the way he understood it. The air softened, the faint hum of the ship shifting into something quieter, more focused. Even the surface beneath his hands adjusted, as if preparing for something delicate, rather than unknown. Pell straightened slightly in the chair that clearly knew too much about his spine. I'm going to assume this is intentional, he said under his breath. If the room starts offering me advice, I'm leaving. The Queen said nothing. Then, a small figure stepped into view. The girl. She moved the same way she had in the repair bay. Quiet, deliberate, as if every step had been considered before it existed. Her long ears framed her face, and for a moment Pell thought she looked exactly the same. Then he noticed the difference. Her eyes. They were not empty anymore, not distant. Watching, not with the silent stillness of before, but with something quieter, present. Pell exhaled just a little. Hi, he said gently. We've met. Briefly, I was the one talking too much. The girl stopped a few steps away. She studied him. Pell resisted the urge to fill the silence again. Barely. Good, he added. Still strong on the quiet communication. I respect consistency. The device was in her hands. It glowed faintly, its patterns shifting in slow, steady rhythms, alive but calm. Pell leaned forward slightly. You kept it, he said. That's usually a good sign. Means I didn't accidentally turn it into something dangerous. The girl looked down at it, then back at him. A small pause. And then she stepped closer. Pell froze for half a second, then relaxed, careful not to make any sudden movements. Right, he murmured. Approach is happening. That's progress. She stopped just in front of him. Up close, he could see the subtle details he hadn't noticed before. The faint shift of light beneath her skin, the way her breathing matched the soft pulse of the device. Connected. Pell tilted his head slightly. You and that thing, he said quietly. You're linked, aren't you? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Pell nodded slowly. Okay, that makes sense. Complicated sense, but still. He hesitated, then gestured gently toward the device. Can I? The girl watched him. A long moment passed. Then she held it out. Pell accepted it carefully, his movements slow, deliberate. No sudden adjustments, no assumptions. The moment his fingers touched the surface, it reacted. Not sharply, not unpredictably, just aware. Pell felt it, not in his hands, but somewhere deeper, like a pattern brushing against his thoughts and deciding not to push. Yeah, he whispered. I remember you. The light shifted slightly, responding. Pell smiled faintly. Good. That means we didn't completely ruin each other last time. The girl moved closer, close enough that he could feel the quiet steadiness of her presence. He glanced up at her. You know, he said softly, I was very confident back in my repair bay. I had tools, familiar walls, a strong sense of, this is probably fine. He gestured lightly around them. I am significantly less confident now. For a brief moment, her expression changed, not fully, but enough. A small, almost invisible curve at the edge of her lips. Pell noticed immediately. There it is, he said quietly. I was hoping that wasn't a one-time event. He looked back down at the device. Okay, he continued, more focused now. Last time, I didn't fix you by fixing you. I just listened. He adjusted his grip slightly, letting the device settle in his hands rather than trying to control it. The light shifted again, slower this time, smoother. Pell exhaled. Yeah, that's better. He glanced at the girl. You don't need it to be perfect, he said. You just need it to not fight you. She watched him, her gaze steady. Pell returned his attention to the device. And it's not broken, he added. Not really, just overwhelmed. The word hung there. The room seemed to lean into it. Pell nodded slightly. Yeah, he murmured. I get that. He loosened his grip further, allowing the connection to exist without forcing it. The device responded. The light expanded, soft and even, flowing outward instead of flickering inward. The girl inhaled sharply. Pell looked up. Her eyes widened slightly. Not in fear, but in recognition. The connection stabilized. Not because Pell had controlled it, because he had stopped trying to. He smiled, small and genuine. There you go, he said. The girl looked at him. And this time, she smiled, not hesitant, not uncertain. Clear, present, real. Pell let out a quiet breath, leaning back slightly in the chair that immediately adjusted, as if proud of him. Okay, he said. That's definitely better. The room changed again, not dramatically, but enough. The tension that had lingered, subtle but constant, finally eased. Behind him, the queen stepped forward. Pell glanced at her. For the first time, her expression was not unreadable. It wasn't a smile, but it was close enough that Pell decided not to comment on it, out loud. That worked, he said instead, because it felt safer. It did, she replied. Pell nodded. Good, because I had absolutely no backup plan. He carefully handed the device back to the girl. She took it, holding it close. Not tightly, not fearfully, just naturally. Pell watched her for a moment, then looked back at the queen. So, he said, what happens now? The queen regarded him. You have fulfilled your purpose, she said. Pell considered that. That sounds final, he said. It is complete, she clarified. He nodded slowly. Right. Complete is good. I like complete. A pause, then. You may return, she said. Pell blinked. Just like that? He asked. No ceremony? No dramatic farewell? I feel like there should be at least a speech. There is no need, the queen replied. Pell nodded once. Efficient. I respect that. He stood from the chair, which reluctantly adjusted back into stillness. For a moment he hesitated. Then he looked at the girl. She met his gaze. Pell gave a small nod. Take care of it, he said. And yourself. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. The smile remained. Pell turned back to the queen. And you, he added, might want to sit in a repair bay more often. It seems to help. The faintest shift touched her expression again. I will consider it, she said. Pell grinned. That's all I can ask. The corridor reformed behind him, the ship quietly guiding him back without visible direction. As he walked, he glanced once at the walls. You're still watching me, aren't you? He said. The surface shifted faintly in response. Pell nodded. Yeah, thought so. The station returned the same way the ship had arrived, by allowing reality to remember itself. Noise flowed back in. Movement resumed. Everything continued as if nothing had happened. Pell stood at the entrance of his repair bay. Same tools, same mess, same quiet hum. He stepped inside slowly, looking around. Okay, he said. He picked up his calibration probe. It did not flicker. He smiled slightly. Good, he added. Let's keep at least one thing predictable. He set it down, rolling his shoulders once before getting back to work. The drone waited. Broken, understandable. Pell reached for his tools. This time he didn't rush. He didn't assume. He just listened. And somewhere, far beyond the station, a small device glowed softly in steady, unbroken light.